Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Teach Me How to Retire, the podcast where we take some time to help you find the ways to implement some things in our lives to make the wise financial decisions. I have with me today one of the partner advisors at our firm, Pinnacle Financial Advisors. Gary Meeks is here with me in the studio today. So for today's episode, we're doing something a little bit different. So the last episodes, you've heard me interview the other partners of the firm to get to know them a little bit better and know what we do as a firm. But we thought it would be wise if I got interviewed as well. And so today I'm going to be on the flip side, which you may turn out wasn't a good idea. I might be more interesting as an interviewer than interviewee, but we're going to let Gary interview me, and I'm going to give some of the answers so that our audience and our clients can get to know a little bit more about me and a little bit more about how I came to be in this profession and how I came to be at Pinnacle Financial Advisors with Van and Gary. So I will turn the time over to you, Gary, and put my thinking cap on and start answering some questions.
Sounds great. I'm excited to be here and visit with Garrett. Let's learn more about his life. I'm sure today I'll learn a few things that I didn't know about
For
him,
better or worse.
which is exciting. Yes, if there's any skeletons. We're already partners, so we're kind of stuck with each other. But
we might have two firms after today's episode.
Yeah.
Just kidding.
So I guess we'll just start where we usually start, which is tell us about your early life, where you grew up, and a little bit about your family.
Yeah, so it's actually interesting. Of us three advisors of the firm, we all grew up in a different hometown, right? But all kind of near where we serve. But I'm the partner of the firm that was born and raised here in Carbon County. So this is my home. My family's been here for quite a few generations. I'm related to more of the town than not. The joke I always make. So for those that don't know me personally, my dad's side of the family are noises. So all of the noises in town I'm related to in some capacity, which is a pretty big chunk of people, right? And then on my mom's side of the family, she was a Norton. So I'm related to all the Nortons on her side of the family, which is another very big chunk of the town. And then I married my wife, Valerie, is a Woodruff. And so that's another good chunk of the town. So we always make the joke now that for our kids, if they want to stay in town, that they have to go somewhere else for college, get married, and come back. But they can't. Everybody in town they date are cousins. So yes, I was born and raised here. Actually, was born and raised on a little farm outside of Wellington, kind of off of Ridge Road down by the Wellington Arena. So my parents had about a 20-acre farm down there that I grew up on. We raised some animals. Grew up with like a lot of people in little farms here in town. Do a couple of cows, couple of pigs, handful of chickens. Had hay fields, horses. But yes, that's kind of where I grew up. Actually, I should backtrack. I did live when I was first born. My dad was working in Colorado at a mine called West Elk out there. So my first home was Paonia, Colorado, is where I actually was born. And then we moved back to Wellington when I was 3 or 4. I can't remember exactly what, but I have very few memories of Colorado. So I'm actually originally, I guess I should say, from Colorado. So I've already lied once at the podcast, but
Well, I think that's pretty common, right? With the coal mining industry, that a lot of times you move around a little bit.
Yep.
Where those jobs are. And
yep. So we were lucky enough to come back home and have been here ever since. So I attended Wellington Elementary, alma mater, and Mount Harmon junior high, not middle school. It was still a junior high when I went there, and then graduated from Carbon High School. So
great. How would you say the way you were raised, brought up in this area, how has that affected your life?
Yeah, great question. So a couple things maybe I'd say with that. I think one of the things, it's probably a common thread that you've heard on some of the episodes too, but I think it's been largely beneficial in my life to have grown up in a smaller town. And like we've mentioned in other episodes, I can't say because I didn't grow up in a big city or a large town that it'd be different. But to me, growing up in a small town, especially a small town with a lot of family, I loved being surrounded by people that I know. I always felt like I had a lot of safe places to go as a kid, and kind of that age-old saying, I guess, I can't think of the right word for it, but everybody says it takes a village to raise a kid, right? And I feel like that's really how I grew up. I feel like I grew up not just in a family, but in a village, that I had extended family and good friends and good neighbors, and that I really was raised by this community that we still live in today. And I think it's been very impactful on my life, both in the sense of security that I had growing up, as well as just the deep-rooted relationships being able to build, and that sense of in the same way that people took care of me and raised me outside of just my parents, that I hope to do that in this community as well, that I look for opportunities to give back to that sense of community. And I don't know that I'd have that drive to give back and have impact if I grew up in an area that didn't have that impact on me.
Tell us a little bit about your very first job and also about your early education.
I'll give you a couple of jobs maybe. So my very first job, I worked for a farmer out in Miller Creek. His name was Andy Harville. Shout out to Andy Harville if you're listening to this podcast, which I'm sure he's probably not. But he leased some land from the Katipases out in Miller Creek and predominantly farmed corn. And so I started working for him when I was about 12 years old, 12 or 13, I can't remember exactly which, but moving water, the good old fun job of going out early in the morning and moving water and turning it on. And then as I got a little more experienced, I was able to drive the tractor a little bit and level some fields and help plant a little bit. And so that was my very first job. And then by the time I was turning 16, my dad, before he got into the coal mines, was a farrier here locally. So he went out to a very famous shoeing school in Oklahoma and became a licensed farrier, and then came home and shoot horses for a handful of years before he got working in the coal mines. And so he kind of taught me that trade, growing up with horses, and we always shoot our own horses. And so I learned that trade from my dad, and then when I turned 16, I started doing that. So I found kind of early in life the pros and cons of being an entrepreneur, and kind of started that way, and ran my own farrier business through high school until I moved away for college. And so those were kind of my first real jobs, was those two.
That's great. I remember as we had our open house and clients were coming in, I know somebody asked you about shoeing horses, and I kind of wondered about, yes, I think you asked when was the last time you shoot a horse or something like that. And so that's a great explanation. Now I kind of know the history of that a little bit. Tell me a little bit about your education, and also how you decided to get into wealth management.
I took a really kind of roundabout way to get to wealth management. So I was one of those kids growing up. I'm still kind of a kid in a lot of ways, I guess, but didn't really know where I wanted to go, and kind of plucked along a couple of ideas until I kind of was found by this. I think it found me more than I found it. But growing up, I actually wanted to be in high school. My goal was to become a welder. I really wanted to become an underwater welder, actually. And then I went to college, or out of high school, and thought, well, maybe I'll do something different than that. It means I'm already in college. And so then I decided I wanted to be an engineer, and I wanted to be a mining engineer. So my dad worked in the mines his whole life, as a lot of my family did, and a lot of the community does. And so I thought, well, that'd be a really good way to get a good career, and to get an education, but be able to come back home. And my goal is always to come back to Carbon County and to be able to likely find a job at one of the mines here as an engineer. And so my freshman year, I started that, and my first time that I learned that wasn't the job for me, I was going to the University of Utah, go Utes, best place in the world, and I was taking my first chemistry class. And in high school, I'd done well enough on some AP testing to test into second year of some college courses. And so I tested into second year chemistry. Never took chemistry in high school, but I tested into second year somehow. And I show up, and it's in this big auditorium. So, I come from Carbon High School to this huge auditorium up in Salt Lake. There was probably 800 kids in the class. Our professor walks out on the stage. He's from Austria, has a super thick Austrian accent. And he walks out there and he goes, I just need all of you to understand that I am here to use this college's research facilities. And if I'm going to research and try to win a Nobel Prize, they make me teach one class. And this is that one class. And the more of you that fail so that I can spend less time grading papers, the easier my life is. So if you don't find a way to pass on your own, you probably won't. And I was one of those kids that did not pass on my own. And so maybe at a different school, things have been different, but it was ended up being a blessing in disguise for me. So I had a miserable time in chemistry, hated it, and got really thinking of, do I want to be an engineer? I wasn't very great at it. A lot of the core disciplines I was studying, I didn't feel like I excelled at. So I ended up leaving college for a time to go serve a mission for my church, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. So I went to Tennessee for 2 years, had a wonderful time, came home and was kind of deciding what to do with my life, and came home between semesters. So I thought, that I just go to work. And so I ended up getting a job at the coal mine that my dad was working at the time, and going underground and working underground, and started making some pretty good money, and thought, well, maybe I'll just be a coal miner. This isn't too bad. And did that for about 8 months. And about 8 months in, I thought, my dad's probably right. I should probably go back to school. It was a really hard work and really hard job. And there's things I really enjoyed about it, but decided that I wanted to go back to school. And so ended up going back to school here locally, transferred down here to USU Eastern, and didn't know really what I wanted to do, but decided that I would start taking classes in the diesel mechanics program. So I started taking classes here at the local diesel mechanics program, which is a fantastic program, great teachers, and I really enjoyed my time there, and really kind of fell in love with it and thought, well, this is what I'm going to do for a career. So I focused on my associates specifically in diesel mechanics. Really enjoyed my education there. I loved, I grew up with my dad being a mechanic too, so we always worked on our own equipment. And I loved being able to learn how things worked more in depth and being able to tear down and rebuild engines. And I really, really enjoyed that. But I always just had a goal in my life to get a bachelor's degree. And so I thought, well, I need to pair this with a bachelor's degree in some way so that I could do something else. And so I started kind of searching for bachelor's degrees, and I decided, with kind of my past experience running my own business, shoeing horses, that I thought I would like to run my own business one day. So I thought, well, I'll go to business school, and one day I could start my own diesel shop, was kind of my goal in life. And so at this time I'd gotten married, and me and my wife had started having kids. And so I went to work as a diesel mechanic and continued working to get my bachelor's degree in business, and was doing that with the intent of one day hopefully starting my own diesel shop here in town and working in that field. And then so I did my bachelor's in business administration, and with that discipline, when you do a business admin degree, you kind of have to become a jack of all trades in a lot of business things. So we had to take marketing classes, accounting classes, management classes, finance classes, kind of HR classes, kind of the whole boot, so that if you're in an administration job, you knew what everyone in the business was doing. And my first finance class I took, I sat down in that class, and the professor came in and told us that he was going to teach us one thing in that whole course. And he said that he was going to teach us the time value of money. And to me, when I sat down there, he said that I didn't know what that meant at all. But he said that he was going to teach us the simple fact that getting $1 today was more valuable than him giving us $1 tomorrow. And he told us that, and I thought, that's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. Like, $1 is $1. Like, you can give it to me today, you can give it to me tomorrow. It's going to be worth $1 either way. But I thought it was intriguing, so I stayed in the class and learned the time value of money. And what he meant by that statement was that if you get $1 today and invest it, that money is then growing. So it's more valuable to get $1 today and invest it than to get $1 tomorrow and to have not had invested that money. And that kind of just opened my mind to something that I never understood. And I just thought that was fascinating. And so at that point, I started studying that more and more. And gradually that became something that I was just fascinated with and really liked, and kind of made that shift to saying, hey, this is what I want to do for a living. I'd like to work in wealth management and help people understand what I didn't understand for all these years, that I could take my dollars and put them to work for me, and they could be appreciating and growing and working harder than what I'm working, so that one day I can have this, analogies often used as this dollar of army bills that are out there gaining more and more dollars for me without me lifting a finger. And I thought that was pretty fascinating. And so I pursued that. And I'm sorry, Gary, that was a very long answer to your question, but that's how I came to be in wealth management. So,
I find that very interesting, because some 30 years ago, I remember some of the same things as I was working on my degree in finance at BYU. Is the time value of money. Right, we can debate which program is better. We won't get into the sports. I don't know if I want to talk about that anyway. Right? BYU's got to do a little bit better on the sports for me to have any bragging rights. But so Garrett, I'd be interested for you to let us know, tell us, as you've worked with Van, we've started working together, tell us how Pinnacle Financial Advisors came to be.
I started working with Van Mays about 3 years ago. So his firm, before we did the merger and rebranded, was known as Mays Retirement Solutions. So he actually found me. I was working for Fidelity Investments at the time. So I graduated with my bachelor's, and that's where I went to work first. And he found me and was needing to hire another financial advisor at his firm. Things were getting a little busy and needed some extra hands. And I jumped at the opportunity to stay local. Fidelity was trying pretty hard to get my family and I to move to Salt Lake. And so we loved the opportunity to move local. And so we started working there and have been there like that for about 3 years now. But we kind of talked, Van and I, a lot back and forth of, what we could do to grow our business and to become something of the greatest value that we could be for our community. And one of the things that we thought when we thought of that question a lot of times is we knew of Gary Meeks and Meeks Financial, and that it was a very highly reputable business here in town too that did what we did, but also did it very similar in a way that we did, that we felt that we had similar personalities and we weren't super pushy with clients, and happy to make sure that we were doing what a client needed. And if it wasn't what a client needed, then we just simply didn't do it. And we'd heard a lot of those same things about the way that you ran your practice. And so we really thought, man, if we were to think of the way that we could best serve this community and look to even expand our breadth and ability to help to other communities, kind of that mindset of if we put two oxen together pulling a cart, that they can get more done than separate oxen pulling two carts, right? And so we reached out to Gary and kind of pitched him this vision of what if we kind of worked together and harnessed our businesses together and use that to reach more people, not in just this community, but in the surrounding communities, kind of the Southeast Utah area. And that's kind of how we came to be. So that kind of joint background of similar culture, how we worked with clients and same industry we're working in, kind of sparked that idea. And then luckily for us, Gary, when we reached out to him, was willing to meet us for a lunch and hear our grand plan. And we spent months hashing it out and came up with what we felt like was the best opportunity to serve the community here locally. And Gary can tell you if he thinks otherwise, but I think so far it's going really, really good. So,
honestly, I don't think I've been this excited about something as far as my business in a long time. The opportunity to be part of this team, the three of us working together. And of course, we've got, beyond that, we have more members of our team. We have Val Gibson, and we've got Samantha Holdaway. Mm-hmm. So we've got, and the three of us working together, I think we bring a lot to the table. I'm excited about this opportunity. I'm really happy you guys found me.
Yep.
And invited me to be a part of this situation. What is the importance of money in your view in someone's life, in your life?
Yeah, everybody buckle up. Here comes some controversy. No, just kidding. It's an interesting thing, right? So, I mean, money's one of those things that you hear all different spectrums, right? Money's the root of all evil, and that's a very common saying, a verse of scripture, and I think there's a lot of truth to that. But then it's also a necessity, right? And so, without money, everybody can relate to times in your life where you've been in a financial pinch or not been where you want to be financially, and the stress that comes from that, and the hardship and the worry and all the things there. And so it's kind of this unique thing that it can be something that can take over our life and be a bad influence, but is also a necessity. And so the way that I personally try to think of money is I try to think of it as simply as a resource, that it's something that is there and that is necessary, but is necessary in the right ways and amounts and usage, right? And so us as the individuals that manage it in our own life, so it's not talking just investment managers, but me managing my own dollars, that I have this resource that I need to try to go out and receive enough to do what I want to do, but I need to be wise with it, because if I'm not wise with it, and whether I'm trying to get more than I necessarily need and it becomes all I care about in life, that can be just as damaging as not having enough. And so I think that's maybe not the clearest way to answer that, but I think of it like that as a resource. And I think it's our responsibility to become good stewards of that resource, to say that, hey, whether it's a goal to make this much money or whether my goal is to live this kind of lifestyle, to find the balance in those things. And then like that, to be able to say, hey, with the resources I have, with the amount I have, how do I manage this in a way that I am able to provide for the responsibilities I have, but also enjoy life? I'm a big believer that that life's meant to be enjoyed. There's way too many good things and fun things in this world to not be out there enjoying some of those things. And so that's where a lot of things come from. I talk with my clients all the time. This very interesting thing that, you can have someone that works at a salary of $30,000 a year that's financially independent and as happy as anybody you know. And then I know a good handful of people, very personally, that make well into the six figures. Some of them, people that I know that make, close to $200,000 a year. And some of us see that number and think, man, if I could make 200 grand a year, I'd never want for anything again. I'd be so happy. And they're miserable. They work paycheck to paycheck. They don't have enough to cover what they're doing. And so it's not necessarily an amount of money, but how I take what I have and use it in a way wisely that I enjoy the life that I want to enjoy. And so that's kind of the way that I think about money, is finding that balance of managing that resource, both in how much do I need to receive and finding the ways to do that. And then with what I have, how do I allocate that so that not only am I covering my responsibilities, but I have breathing room to enjoy life and am not financially stressed.
Let's switch topics a little bit. Tell us a little bit about your family and some of your hobbies.
Yeah. So I am lucky enough to be married to my best friend. Her name is Valerie Woodruff, formerly now Gibson. So we've been married for coming up on 8 years now. So November will be our 8th anniversary. So it's getting to be a little while. And then together we have 3 children. So we had all of our kids almost exactly 2 years apart. So summer's birthday summer for us. We have a kid every month this summer with a birthday. So we have a June, July, and August. So they are all kind of rotate through. So we're going into odd year, I call it, because after August we'll have a 7-year-old, a 5-year-old, and a 3-year-old. So our oldest is Benjamin. He'll be going into 2nd grade this year and is turning 7. And then our middle child, Gary, will like this. His name's actually Brigham. Not named after the university. I had a great uncle, or actually been a great uncle that was named Brigham, and so we named after him, but we call him Briggs for short. And then our baby girl is Charlotte, who we call Lottie for short. So that's kind of our life, my wife and kids. We live here in Price. Things we like to do. We like to get outside and do a lot of things. Anybody that knows my in-laws, especially if you know my father-in-law, Rusty Woodruff, you know that he likes to play pickleball. And my wife does too. So we spend a fair amount of time in warm months playing pickleball. We spend a lot of time in Schofield. My in-laws have a cabin up in Schofield, and we love Schofield area. So we do a lot of fishing, and I hunt up there and spend time at the cabin. I like playing golf and frisbee golf, so I get out on those. And then probably one of the other things that I'm most passionate about in my life is my personal favorite sport is wrestling. And so I wrestled growing up in high school, and now I am lucky enough to have the opportunity to give back and help coach wrestling here locally. So I help on the staff at Mount Harmon, and then I also help run the youth program here in town. And so that's something that if you ask my wife, it might take too much time, but from fall to middle of winter, we spend a lot of time in wrestling rooms and a lot of time on wrestling mats. So those are probably the main things that we do as a family for entertainment and recreation.
That's great. Maybe just in closing, would you like to tell us a little bit more about your process, how you work with clients?
So how I work with clients, the thing that I think is the most valuable for clients, and you guys have probably even heard me mention this on the podcast already since I've been on every episode, is I think one of the most valuable things that I do for clients is making sure that everybody has a plan. I think it's one thing to say, hey, I have assets and I know they're being managed, versus I have assets and they're being managed for a specific reason for the goal I'm working towards. And so that's really what I try to focus and anchor my process to. So I try to make sure every time I meet with clients that besides just understanding what needs they have as far as, this is the account I need and this is the assets I need taken care of, knowing really what those assets are needed for. What's the goal for this money? Do we have a goal to retire early? Do we have a goal to work until we're 80? Do we have a goal to make sure we have a large, estate to give to our children and grandchildren? Because all those different answers, even though we have the same kind of an account, are very different ways we manage it or take care of it. And so I really like to make sure I understand what the goals are for my clients, and then build a plan on, hey, this is where we're at, and this is how we're going to get to that goal. And then using the tools, the accounts, the investments, the different things in our tool belt to get to that point. So I would say that's kind of the process that I try to follow, is centering on, the goals of this is where we want to be, this is where we're at, and this is how we're going to get there. and making sure that's part of the conversations we have.
Well, Garrett, it's been a great opportunity for me to be able to interview you a little bit, get to know you a little bit better. And we definitely need to get to know you a little bit better. We know you do the podcasts, but thank you for that.
No, thank you, Gary. And just a quick reminder for everybody out there, if you like this show and you want to listen to it, be sure to follow us on YouTube. You can subscribe to our YouTube channel. And then be sure to follow us on social media if you like content like this. We'll continue to put out more and more financial content to help you in your life. And you can get us on LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube.